Hey everyone, and welcome to another Deep Dive. We love to go deep here. And today we're going to be diving into all about negotiations in English.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, so you're here because you want to feel more confident and prepared for negotiations, whether it's at work or in your personal life, or you just want to level up your skills. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So to help us with that, we have this awesome material that you sent over, Negotiating in English, Key Phrases for Success. It's pretty cool, and like I say, the format's pretty interesting, too. It's kind of set up like a podcast script.
Oh, wow. That's very meta.
I know, right? So we're not only going to break down those key phrases, but also analyze like how they're presented for learning.
Very cool. It's like a negotiation masterclass hidden within a podcasting guide. I love it.
Okay, let's jump right in. So the first section is starting a negotiation. And they kick things off with phrases like, I'd like to discuss, or let's find a solution that works for both of us. Like pretty straightforward stuff. But what's your take on why they emphasize this collaborative tone right off the bat?
Well, first impressions are so important, right? Especially in negotiations, these phrases, they set that cooperative tone from the beginning. It's like you're saying, hey, I'm not here to fight. I'm here to find a solution that works for us both.
Right. It's like setting the stage for a win-win situation.
Exactly. And there's actually a lot of research that backs this up. Starting a negotiation with this collaborative spirit, it often leads to, more creative solutions and better outcomes for both sides.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's like you're building that foundation of trust from the start. Okay, so moving on to the making offers section. One thing that stood out to me is that the source material is really big on being specific. Like, they give examples like, we can offer a 10% discount if you place a larger order. Why is that specificity so crucial in a negotiation? Wouldn't it make more sense to be a little vague at first? Leave some room for maneuver.
Well, there is definitely some wiggle room in a negotiation, but being too vague can actually backfire. It can weaken your position.
Really? How's that?
Think about it. Let's say you're negotiating a salary and you just say something like, I'm looking for a competitive salary. What does that even mean? It's so open to interpretation.
Yeah, I see your point.
Right. But if you come in and say, based on my experience and qualifications, a salary range of, X to Y is appropriate, now you've anchored the conversation with some concrete figures. It shows you've done your homework, and it makes it much harder for the other side to lowball you.
Okay, that makes total sense. I've definitely been guilty of being too vague in the past.
Yeah.
And it never really worked in my favor. So we've made our offer, but what happens when the other side comes back with a counteroffer that's not quite what we were hoping for?
That's where the next section, responding to offers, comes in handy.
Yeah.
This section gives you the language to push back gracefully without, completely shutting down the conversation.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. For example, instead of just saying, no way, you could use a phrase like, that's an interesting proposal, but could we explore some other options? This keeps the dialogue open and, shows that you're flexible while still advocating for what you need.
It's like finding that balance between standing your ground and being willing to compromise, which, if I'm being honest, I sometimes struggle with. I remember this one negotiation where I got so caught up in proving my point.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was...
Let's pause there for a second, because what's fascinating is that your personal anecdote actually highlights something that the source material touches on: the importance of emotional intelligence. It's not just about the words you use. It's also about, reading the room, managing your emotions, and responding in a way that keeps things moving forward.
So true. I let my emotions get the better of me in that negotiation, and it totally backfired, having these ready-to-go phrases, especially for those tricky moments that could be a game changer.
It's more than just phrases. It's about developing that mindset of preparedness. When you feel prepared to handle different scenarios, you naturally project more confidence, and that confidence makes you a more effective negotiator.
You're so right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've made it through the offers,
Yeah.
counter offers, and managed to keep our cool correct.
What happens next?
Well, that brings us to the final stage, closing a negotiation. The source material really stresses the importance of clarity and confirmation at this point. Things like, to confirm we've agreed to, or let's just summarize the key points.
And I have to admit, I've definitely learned this the hard way too. There was this one time I just assumed everything was clear, so I skipped that whole summarization part, and it led to a huge misunderstanding later on.
It happens more often than you think. We tend to assume that because we understand something the other side does too.
Yeah.
But taking that extra time to recap and confirm, just ensures that everyone is on the same page.
Right. It prevents those messy situations down the road.
Exactly, and it protects both parties. It's like that final quality check before you hit the submit button on the whole negotiation seems simple, but it's so important. So I'm really starting to see the value of having these specific phrases at my fingertips. It's like having a script to follow.
It's more than just a script, though. They act as a framework, guiding you through each stage and ensuring clarity throughout the process. But remember, these phrases are just the starting point. The real magic comes in adapting them to your own style and the specific context of each negotiation.
You're right. It's not about memorizing a script. It's about understanding the underlying principles and then using these phrases as building blocks to craft your own approach. Okay, so we've covered a lot here, from setting the tone to making offers, responding gracefully, and closing with confidence. What stood out to you the most from this material so far?
For me, it's that consistent emphasis on establishing that collaborative framework from the very beginning that sets the stage for a more positive and productive negotiation experience. It's not about viewing the other side as an adversary, but as a partner in finding a mutually beneficial solution.
I totally agree, and it's fascinating that even though this material is specifically about negotiating in English, a lot of these principles are universal.
Yeah, absolutely. The core concepts of clear communication, active listening, and finding those win-win solutions, those transcend language barriers. So even if you're not negotiating in English, this deep dive can still offer some really valuable insights.
Exactly. It's like we're uncovering this universal language of negotiation, one that goes beyond words and focuses on building understanding and achieving those shared goals. But I think what makes this material really powerful is that it gives you concrete tools to put those principles into practice.
You're absolutely right. It's not just theoretical. It provides actionable phrases that you can start using immediately to navigate those tricky conversations. And the more you practice, the more natural and effortless they become.
Okay, so we've explored the structure of the material, and we've delved into some key takeaways for each stage of negotiation. But I think it's time we shift gears a bit and explore how you, the listener, can really apply these insights to your own life and specific negotiation scenarios. Are you ready to take this deep dive to the next level?
Let's do it. I'm eager to see how we can connect these principles to your unique context and help you feel even more confident and prepared for your next negotiation.
Okay, so we've unpacked all this great material about negotiating in English, those key phrases and strategies, but now it's time to make it real. How can we actually apply all this stuff to our own lives?
Yeah, because let's face it, negotiation isn't just some, theoretical concept. It's something we do every day.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about it negotiating with your partner about weekend plans, or with your boss about deadlines, or even just with yourself about how much work you're going to get done before, taking a break.
Exactly, and that's what's so cool about understanding these principles. You can approach all these everyday interactions with so much more confidence and, intention.
It's like leveling up your communication skills across the board.
Right, and it's not about manipulating people or always getting your way. It's about clear, respectful communication.
Yeah.
Finding solutions that actually benefit everyone involved.
I love that. So let's say you're about to go into a negotiation. Maybe it's for a raise at work, or maybe you're buying a car. What's one key takeaway from this deep dive that you could use right away?
I would say the most important thing is setting that collaborative tone from the very beginning. Remember those phrases we talked about in the starting a negotiation section?
Oh, yeah, like I'd like to discuss, or let's find a solution that works for both of us.
Exactly. Use those phrases. Show the other person that you're there to work together to find a solution that benefits both of you. That initial framing it can really make all the difference.
So true. It's like you're establishing that foundation of trust and cooperation.
Yeah.
And that can lead to a more positive experience overall. And what's interesting is that I think this approach is especially important in those high-stakes negotiations where emotions can run high.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
When you come in with that collaborative mindset, it can really help diffuse tension, build rapport, create a more open atmosphere, and that can lead to more creative solutions, better outcomes for everyone.
I'm curious, have you ever been in a negotiation where you were able to successfully shift the tone from adversarial to collaborative?
I have actually. A few years ago, I was involved in this negotiation that started out super tense. Both sides were really dug in, and it felt like it was going nowhere.
Well, we've been there.
Yeah.
Oh.
But then I decided to try something different. I took a step back and I said, look, I understand your concerns, and I want to find a solution that works for both of us. Let's put our heads together and see what we can come up with. And you know what? The whole atmosphere shifted.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, we were able to have more productive conversation, and in the end, we reached an agreement that everyone was happy with.
That's a great example of how a simple shift in mindset and language can totally transform a negotiation. It shows that even in those tough situations, there's always the possibility of finding that common ground. And I think that's a really empowering message for our listeners. You don't have to be stuck in that confrontational dynamic. You have the power to change the direction of the conversation.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important point from the source material negotiation is a skill that can be learned and improved upon. It's not something you're either born with or not. By consciously incorporating these phrases and strategies,
Right.
into your interactions, you can become a more confident and persuasive communicator.
And it's an ongoing process, right?
Yeah.
Every negotiation you have, whether it goes smoothly or not, it's a learning opportunity.
Absolutely. You can analyze what worked, what didn't, how you can refine your approach for next time.
It's like anything else. The more you practice, the better you get. And with each negotiation, you'll gain more confidence, develop your own style, become more adept at navigating all those complexities of human interaction. Speaking of complexities, the source material is all about negotiating in English. But I'm guessing a lot of these principles apply no matter what language you're speaking, right?
Oh, for sure. The underlying concepts of clear communication, active listening, seeking mutually beneficial outcomes, those are universal. Of course, there might be some cultural nuances, specific etiquette to consider depending on the context. But the core principles, those remain the same.
So it's like we're not just learning how to negotiate in English, we're learning how to negotiate effectively, period. It's about understanding the human element, building connections, finding those win-win solutions.
Exactly. And that's what makes this deep dive so valuable. It's not just about acquiring a set of phrases, it's about developing a deeper understanding of the art of negotiation, empowering you to become a more confident, persuasive, and effective communicator in all aspects of your life.
So we've really dug deep into the world of negotiation, haven't we? Exploring those key phrases and strategies from the source material. But there's this one aspect we haven't really touched on yet, which I think is especially relevant for a lot of our listeners. Negotiating in English when it's not your native language, that can feel like a whole different ballgame, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Even for experienced negotiators, stepping outside that linguistic comfort zone can be a bit daunting. But the good news is that many of the principles we've talked about, they actually become even more crucial in those cross-cultural situations.
Oh, I see what you mean. Like clear communication, active listening, those things take on even greater importance when you're dealing with potential language barriers.
Exactly. And that's where I think the source material, with its emphasis on specific phrases, can be super helpful. It gives you this framework for expressing yourself clearly and confidently, even if your English isn't perfect.
So it's like having these ready-made building blocks that you can use to construct your message, making sure your meaning gets across, even if you stumble over a word or two here and there.
Precisely. And remember, negotiation is a two-way street. If there's a misunderstanding, don't hesitate to politely ask for clarification or rephrase what you're trying to say. Most people are really understanding and will work with you to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Right. Taking a moment to clarify can prevent a lot of headaches down the line. It shows that you're committed to making the negotiation successful.
Yeah.
And speaking of potential challenges, we should probably touch on cultural differences too, right? Because those can really impact how negotiations play out.
Oh, absolutely. Some cultures are very direct, while others prefer a more indirect approach. Nonverbal cues can vary widely, too.
So it's not just about the words themselves, it's about understanding the cultural context, the whole picture. That might mean doing a bit of research beforehand, being sensitive to those nonverbal signals, and being open to adjusting your style based on the other person's cultural background.
It's about being adaptable, respectful, and willing to learn. Every cross-cultural negotiation is a chance to broaden your understanding and build those connections across cultures.
That's a really cool way to look at it. You're not just hammering out a deal, you're engaging in this cultural exchange. But I can imagine it can be a little nerve-wracking, especially if you're not familiar with the other person's culture.
It's totally natural to feel that way, but most people really appreciate it when you make an effort to understand their culture. It builds trust and can lead to a smoother and more productive negotiation.
So even if you make a few mistakes along the way, the important thing is to approach the situation with humility, a willingness to learn, and that genuine desire to connect.
Exactly. And that brings us back to what I think is the heart of negotiation. It's about human connection. It's about building relationships, finding common ground, creating those win-win situations. And that's something that transcends language and cultural barriers.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I just want to say this. If you're feeling a bit intimidated by the idea of negotiating in English, especially if it's not your first language, remember that it's a skill you can develop. Just keep practicing and don't give up.
And embrace those challenges. Each negotiation, no matter how it goes, is a chance to learn and grow and become a more confident communicator.
It's all about progress, not perfection. Well, this has been a fantastic journey, hasn't it? We've explored so much, from specific phrases to the deeper aspects of connection and cultural awareness. I feel like we've really covered it all.
And remember, you can always come back to this deep dive anytime you need a refresher. We're always here to support you on your negotiation journey.
Absolutely. So go out there, put what you've learned into practice, and don't forget, you've got this.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
See you on the next deep dive.